I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was just reading, I read off a little bit of your bio. I really had no idea that you had been living with MS since the age of 11. So, wow, that's a long time. So I would love to hear, tell us a little bit about yourself, your life, and how did you originally get diagnosed? Can you hear me? Oh, I think I might have.
I'm
Oh,
so
can you?
sorry. The
Oh,
internet connection is kind of crazy because I live right at the border between Mexico and the United States. But um, so a little bit more about when I was diagnosed. So essentially, how I realized that I noticed something different was going on or just something wrong, right? Was I used to walk to school with my little sister, and there was just one day that I just started dragging my right leg, and I just started feeling the sensation of numbness and tingling and just weakness on the entire right side of my body. And to me, that was just odd because initially I thought, oh, it's just like how it normally is, where like you just sit on your leg for too long and just like falls asleep.
mm-hmm.
But no, it just remained consistent and it just never truly woke up. So we went to the local doctor, or the local hospital, sorry, which is the only hospital close to us in the Yuma County community. And initially there, they told me that it was bacteria in the brain. And it took a couple of months for me to officially get my multiple sclerosis diagnosis. But that took me to a larger hospital 3 hours away. And that was when I finally got diagnosed, maybe like a year or so later.
Hmm.
But yeah, like to me and to my family, it was just confusion all over because we had never heard about this disease. We had never really known anyone else that had it in our family. At this time, I am the only one that has MS in my family. No one else, sorry, has been officially diagnosed with it. So, like I said, everything was just so brand new, so different, so foreign to us. And I mean, even till this day, 16 years later, I still continue to learn from it, and it definitely catches me off guard at times. But yeah, that's been my journey so far.
And so, what outside of the symptoms that you just described when you initially were diagnosed, what other symptoms do you experience on a regular basis?
So I feel like this year my MS has progressed so much where I experienced so many different symptoms that I never really dealt with before in the past. But I mean, I deal with like nerve pain. Sometimes I deal with what's it called? Vertigo. I've dealt with like all types of it. I deal with brain fog.
Hmm.
I I mean, honestly, I feel like my MS kind of has thrown me so many curveballs this year where like I've dealt with like so many new ones, like the MS hug. I had never in my life heard about that. And to me, I thought, okay, I've done enough research to know what type of symptoms MS can give you, but no, that one was completely different to me.
What is that?
So MS hug, in my experience, it was basically tightness, and honestly, it felt like someone was squeezing the crap out of you. And initially, I thought, oh my God, what if I have COVID? Because it was kind of like I was having like a lot of heartburn, so like a lot of burning sensation in my throat, but mostly it was the tightness. And specifically, it was for me in the chest. So initially, I thought it was COVID, which was impossible because I never left my house. But I was still freaking out, but ultimately I did research everything and it ended up being the MS hug. But honestly, it can happen in any part of your body. And for me, it was mostly in my chest and my back. And I still kind of deal with that at times, but not as much as I did in the beginning of the year. But honestly, like I've dealt with so many symptoms, like spasticity is a big one for me at the moment, especially with the weather changing and now that it's much colder. I
Hmm.
deal with a lot of muscle stiffness. So if I'm like sitting at a time where I'm just like using my laptop or anything, or just simply using my cell phone, I stand up and I feel like the Tin Man. Like I feel
Mm.
really, really stiff, and it takes quite some time for me to feel like I'm feeling normal again, and it doesn't feel like I have that stiffness anymore. But that one I am currently having a lot of problems with. And I mean, here and there, I do deal with migraines, but I feel like I've always dealt with that since I was a teenager. But
Hmm.
to me, it never really clicked that it was linked to my MS. I
Hmm.
always thought, oh, maybe I'm just like using like the computer for too long, or like I'm just like too stressed out over school, but I never really connected that together until now.
Well, you mentioned the cold weather, and
Mm-hmm.
we know that cold weather can really affect some people's symptoms. Have you experienced that throughout the time that since you've been diagnosed? Does it get worse in the winter for you?
So I discovered that cold weather affected me up until maybe last year. So I relocated to Colorado for a job opportunity, and I had never experienced that cold of weather here in Arizona.
Hmm.
So I had always had problems with heat sensitivity and not being out for too long because that would just exhaust me or even trigger my MS. But it was until I was in Colorado and I was dealing with snow and like really, really low extreme temperatures that I realized that I also am sensitive to the cold. And now that I feel like since my MS progressed, I mean, it brought on the spasticity and all of that. And I mean, like I said, everything has changed so much just this year because of my MS progressing.
And you moved back then to Arizona?
Yes, yes, I'm
Okay,
back in Arizona home.
yeah, it's what city do you live in?
San Luis. So it's basically a tiny little border town right next to Mexico. And literally anything close that's like a major city is like 3 hours away.
Okay, my husband is from Sierra Vista. Is that
Oh,
close?
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know you
that's
said Yuma, and I was like, I think that's really close.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's maybe like 3 hours away, so that's kind of closer to Tucson. But I actually used to live in Tucson and I went to Sierra Vista once. It's a pretty calm little town.
Yeah, yeah, I've been there once. It was cool. It was cool to visit. Sorry, we got sidetracked there for a minute.
It's okay.
Okay, so looking back at the past 16 years, I mean, I'm sure you've had ups and downs. You've probably tried all kinds of different treatments and medications. Can you give us sort of maybe a brief, I guess, description of some of the things you've tried and what's been helpful or not helpful?
Yeah, so I actually recently created an Instagram TV video about that specifically, since I feel like we don't really talk about the multiple and the many like medications that are now available compared to when I was first diagnosed. But
Hmm.
I so far have had been on 5 medications. So, I mean, ultimately, the reason why I'm not on the ones that I have been on the past is because they didn't work for me. But I have been on Copaxone, which is a self-injection medication. And back when I used to take it, it was every day. And that one unfortunately didn't work. The second one was Tisabri. And like I said in my video, I will forever commend that medication. I will rave about it every single day. It was amazing. I would simply just go get my infusion every month, and I would completely even forget that I had MS. I didn't
Wow.
deal with as many symptoms that as I'm dealing with now. But yeah, that one was such a breeze. It was so easy, and I loved it. I loved it. But unfortunately, I became JC positive, JCV positive.
Hmm.
So the JC virus, and if you're positive and while you're taking Tisabri, that increases your chances of getting PML, right? So my doctor was like, no, let's change to a different one. And that's when I transitioned to Tecfidera. And that one I was on for a couple of years, but unfortunately it stopped working for me. And then up until recently, during the summer, I tried Gilenya, and that one was nice, but unfortunately, I was still dealing with relapses. And ultimately, my doctor wanted me to transition to Ocrevus since the beginning of the year. But due to the pandemic and with everything being delayed, we couldn't start that one sooner. But I'm on that one right now. The first two half doses I did have problems with. I suffered an allergic reaction and I ended up in the ER.
Mm.
but my doctor does want us to keep trying. So I'm hoping the first full dose, which I'm going to be getting in April, I hope that one goes a little bit smoother. But yeah, honestly, I had been looking forward to Ocrevus because for me, I feel like infusion medications are so much more easier. And when I'm taking pill forms, those are so much harder for me to remember. I
Mm.
feel like with the brain fog, that really messes with me. And I think that I've taken the pill, and then I'm like, no, I haven't. And I do have the little boxes where like you put your little pills and
Yeah.
like I
Even
try to
that,
be
right? Yep.
yeah, I try to be very responsible and I have two of these actually, but there's been times and even moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm doing my best when taking care of my MS, but I mean, then again, like who is a pro at being your very best, when dealing with a chronic illness?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're dealing with it day in and day out, so I
Mm-hmm.
can understand that. You know, I think it's important. I think we have a lot of people that follow us that are very new to this world, and so I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important and really good for them to hear your journey because people may not realize that it really might take the switching and the trying different things, and
Mm-hmm.
something might work for a while and then it might not. And so,
Yeah.
um, not just to say, well, don't get your hopes up, but to say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like this is what to expect. And when you kind of set your expectations, it may help sort of your mental mindset about, kind of going into that journey.
Mm-hmm.
How have you dealt with that side of things, like the mental side of things? I'm sure it's easy to get down when you're dealing with a
Mm-hmm.
chronic illness. Are you able to sort of stay positive, or is that a regular struggle for you?
I do struggle with that a lot. I was actually diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 13. So that was around the time where I dealt with the worst relapse that I've ever had in my life. And I basically became paralyzed. And I was in the hospital for 3 months, basically relearning how to do everything all over again. And that was pretty traumatic. But I feel like throughout time, like just dealing with such an unpredictable disease like MS is, I feel like I've always struggled with really accepting my diagnosis. And I feel like although the pandemic has been terrible, I'm kind of like grateful for the time that I've been here at home with my family and everything because I've realized that I've grown so much and I mean accepting my journey and everything and even sharing my journey because before this year, I didn't really tell anyone that I was sick.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, there have been times where like I've done really dumb decisions because of my MS. And I mean, like not taking certain medications on time or even like stopping medications. And it was just irresponsibility all around. But like I'm grateful that I've grown and I've learned from my mistakes, especially this year, because I mean, it's something that is going to be with me forever and I can't just push it aside. But I definitely do struggle with that. Like, I know that, and I told this to a fellow MSer, Roxy. She's so nice. And that's one thing too, having a community is very important. But I'm really grateful that I've found so many people that I can really connect with. And the fact that I've been able to share my journey this year, like it's been such a gratifying feeling and it's just amazing. But I mean, I do deal with depression. Like I know that I look like I'm always happy all the time in my photos,
Well,
but
don't we all look like that on
I know like
Instagram, right?
in yeah, exactly. Like Instagram there's a certain expectation when it comes to social media where like you have to project this type of lifestyle where like you're always happy and nothing is going on in your life. But I try to be as honest as I can because I kind of see my social media platforms as kind of like my diary where I share the reality of what it is to deal with a chronic illness. But I mean, like I said, I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety now, which I had never really accepted that up until this year. But I mean, we take it one day at a time, like no one's perfect and life likes to throw so many curveballs at you and you just try your best and make it to tomorrow.
So what made you want to start sharing this year? If you said, you know, lots of you hadn't told a lot of people and you sort of had a shift in your mindset there.
Yeah. So I do want to credit two people that have been pushing me to do this for a long, long time, which is my sister, who is like my rock and my inspiration, and my cousin. So Kat and Melissa, both of them have been telling me, you need to share your story. Like, it'll help you feel better. Like, maybe you'll even find people that you could connect with. And I always said, no, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I feel like I'm embarrassed. Like, I don't want to seem a certain way, or like, I don't, like, for some reason, I always thought like if I share this with people, like they're not fully gonna grasp it and like, or even try to understand it. But no, like honestly, there have been so many people, like friends and family, who I never really spoke to about my MS, and they even tell me like it's incredible to think that you've been dealing with all of this and you never really told anyone. And I mean, there have been people that I have told, and I regret telling them about it because either they've been very ignorant or just refused to really learn about it. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to teach others so that we become more educated about what other people are dealing with, like behind these screens. And yeah, I mean, they were like, just start now. Like, you're not working at the moment, because unfortunately, I had to stop working because of a really bad relapse that I had in January. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go for it. We'll see how it goes. And I also started doing YouTube videos, which I really enjoy doing. Unfortunately, I haven't been doing that much these last couple of weeks, but I enjoy creating content. I enjoy sharing my story, and I love getting those messages from people saying like, oh, I found your page through like hashtags or something. And it feels really nice to know that there's others that are dealing with the same thing that I am. And that's what makes me think like, okay, it's worth being this vulnerable on
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about was just in light of you saying you hadn't shared with a lot of people before,
Mhm.
you know, we hear a lot about in the chronic illness community about illnesses that you can't see. So
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, you don't look like you have an illness.
Yeah.
People hear that a lot. How do you deal with that? And what would you say to someone who sort of is judgmental about that?
Ooh, I've dealt with that a lot, even with friends who claim to be there for me, but are really just like, oh, well, you look fine right now. Like, you're not really sick. But
Mm-hmm.
I've dealt with that all my life, and it's unfortunate that we have to continue having to prove that we're sick, because that's what we are, you know? Like, we're sick. Unfortunately, you can't see what I'm feeling, what I'm dealing with, but I mean, you shouldn't be judging other people and their struggles, because that's what you assume is what is supposed to be the picture of you're sick.
Right.
And I can tell you, especially up until recently, when I had to use my walker or my cane, I've gotten a couple of stares. I've gotten really inappropriate comments where like, oh, you weren't using that last week or even yesterday. And it's unfortunate that I have to like